Bonjour à tous et à toutes, je suis Alexandre Sheldon de Prompt et aujourd'hui c'est moi qui ai la chance de recevoir un invité bien spécial, Monsieur Bruce Schneier, qui est une grande figure dans le monde de la cybersécurité. Alors Monsieur Schneier va se connecter à nous dans quelques instants à partir de la région de Boston et comme vous pouvez vous en douter, l'entretien va se poursuivre en anglais. So for those of you who are not familiar with the work of Mr. Bruce Schneier, he's become somewhat of an icon in the world of information security. He's the author of 14 books and countless articles. And yes, these articles and books deal with technical aspects of information security, but he's also very much interested in the social, ethical, cultural issues that are raised by our use of new technologies. He's also a lecturer at the Harvard Kennedy School and a fellow at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. His latest book was published in 2019 and is called We Have Root, Even More Advice from Schneier on Security. That last part of the title is a reference to his very popular and influential blog, Schneier on Security. So, Mr. Bruce Schneier, thank you very much for joining us today.
Merci, bonjour.
Merci.
That's about it in French. I mean, I can probably do it, but it would be embarrassing to do it and like record it in public.
Okay, well, I'm fine with English, so we're all good. So instead of inviting you today to deliver a keynote address, we decided to organize a sort of a virtual Q&A session. And for that purpose, we've been gathering questions among the Quebec cybersecurity community. And we've received quite a lot of questions. So we probably won't have time, unfortunately, to go through all of them. So let's not waste any time and let's get right down to it and ask these questions that were sent directly to you. So our first question comes from Eric Hébert, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at Québécois Media. And he asks, vulnerabilities in products and platforms are growing exponentially, and nothing, including strong DevSecOps, seem to be putting a dent in the trend. So what do you think, what radical change do you think needs to happen so that we don't keep managing a never-ending patching nightmare?
So, right, this is a hard question. Right? Software is hard to design securely, and our mechanism is that we find vulnerabilities and patch them in real time, which actually works pretty well with our computers and phones. Is it going to fail miserably with the Internet of Things? There's a lot of stuff out there that's just not patchable. So I think it's even worse than the questioner asks. What to do about it, right? There's a tech answer and a policy answer. We need to get better at writing secure software. And I think we actually are much better than we usually manifest. But we need the actual economic incentives to do it. And this is the answer that no one likes, and that's regulation. I mean, the reason things will be secure is because it will be cheaper than producing them insecurely. And right now, you save money by having insecure devices in this never-ending patch cycle. If you want something different, we need to actually legislate for change. I'm not convinced most countries can do it alone. Right? It's really the US, the EU, maybe Canada can do something. I like seeing good regulations in a large enough market wherever, because it affects the entire world. I'm going to make this up. If Canada starts demanding higher software development standards, then no company is going to have two products, one for Canada, one for everyone else. I in the US are going to benefit from your laws, just like we all benefit from the EU and their privacy laws and their data security laws. So that's the way to think about the answer. It's technical, but it really is economic. Right now, the market incentives don't reward quality software, so we're stuck patching the stuff that isn't very good.
All right, thank you very much. Our second question comes from Geneviève Lajeunesse, who's a cybersecurity professional working out of Montreal. And Geneviève asks, 27 years after the release of your widely distributed and studied manual, Applied Cryptography, how do you feel about the present deployment of cryptographic protections? Do you feel like we've collectively learned the lesson about the importance of strong crypto to protect personal data and privacy?
So I think we have. So I think I turn around. I think there's a book up there. Yeah, right there are copies of it up on the top of the shelf. It actually, amazingly enough, it is still in print, even though I think there are better books out there, right? Cryptography engineering on the other side is certainly more modern. And in that book and the follow-on books, I'm writing about the math of cryptography. And I think we're actually really good at the math of cryptography. Are we deploying it everywhere? up and down. But it's in all of our browsers. It's in all of our smartphones. It's in all of our computers. It really is doing a lot of work in our lives in the background where we don't see it, right? It's securing your Google Cloud, and it's securing your iMessages. And so all of these things are working. How we learn the lessons is interesting, because the lessons is really a policy lesson. I, in the United States, am still fighting battles against backdoors in cryptography by law enforcement that wants to be able to break into our messages and our phones and our devices and our archives in attempts to solve crimes, and doing so in a way that puts us all at risk. So we're still fighting the battles of the crypto wars, right? So in that book, I wrote about the Clipper chip, which was the mid-90s way that the government in the United States, then it was President Clinton, who was trying to put backdoors in cryptography. And that war has sort of moved forward through the decades, right? This year, you see it with client-side scanning and Apple's new proposal, but it's the same basic battle. I mean, are things going to be secure by default or insecure by default? And there are arguments in either case. But what's changed between the mid-90s and today is that computers are now matters of public safety, right? It's not just about data, email, and messages. It's about our cars and our thermostats and medical devices and power plants and election systems. It's things that actually affect us. And as that balance has changed, the need for strong cryptography without backdoors has gotten greater. And that's what I see the changes. And have we learned the lessons? Don't know. I mean, some yes, some no.
It's a work in progress.
It always is.
It always will be. All right, our next question comes from Benoit Dupont, who is a professor of criminology at the Université de Montréal. So his question is this. What do you think are the main types of cyber attacks we should expect to be leveraged against artificial intelligence? In other terms, what opportunities are being created by AI for cyber attackers? And there's a second part to his...
Well, let's do the first part first. Let me
sure,
you do the second part, and then forget the first part. Right, there's a lot of people are writing about this. So certainly AI systems are computers, and all the conventional attacks on computer systems all work against AI systems, not magically different. The question is, what is new in AI systems? And there you see a lot of work in what's known as adversarial machine learning, right? Ways that you can manipulate these autonomous decision-making systems, either by poisoning the data, poisoning the model, and the different ways you can extract data from the model by making queries. It's sort of interesting to look at the different attacks. And there is a good paper. I'm going to get the title wrong. I think it's like a taxonomy of machine learning attacks, where some researchers listed all of the different ways these systems can be attacked. And I'm not going to do justice by trying to remember them off the top of my head. I would go to that paper and read their taxonomy. And the moral is that there will be ways to attack these systems that are new. The systems will be vulnerable, of course, because they're not designed by computer security experts, and vulnerabilities is how we do things. And we have to pay attention, especially as these systems become critical in our infrastructure, in our lives. All right, what's part two?
Part two, thank you. The part two is, do you think there's a real risk that non-state actors, cyber criminals, will use AI tools to commit cyber crimes, or is AI too sophisticated a tool and will remain a tool used by state-backed cyber?
Well,
attackers?
I mean, I think if it's too sophisticated a tool to be used by non-state actors, it'll be the first one since I guess nuclear power can be used by non-state actors. It'll be the first one in the history of mankind that is too sophisticated, which seems unlikely. Of course, it'll be used by criminals, just like everything else is. And expertise flows downhill. If it's too sophisticated this year, next year it'll be someone's PhD thesis. Following year it'll be a criminal hacker tool. So the sophistication doesn't protect us, or if it does, it doesn't protect us for long.
Great, thank you very much. Our next question comes from Olivier Bilodeau, he's the cybersecurity research lead at our friends at Go Secure. His question is this. Given the numerous security problems in Microsoft's ecosystem of products that were disclosed over the summer, do you think that Microsoft's strong backward compatibility policy should come to an end for the sake of security? And before you answer that question, maybe you could help us understand what is Microsoft's strong backward compatibility policy.
Well, you got to ask the questioner. I'm not an expert on Microsoft's backward compatibility. My guess is that things are backwards compatible, right? Because that's sort of, from a performance continuity perspective, that's what you want. You want the old stuff to work with the new operating system. Otherwise, like, nobody's going to upgrade, right? The old files need to work with the new version of Word or Excel or whatever. And presumably what the questioner is pointing out is Microsoft is pretty diligent about this, that they don't like breaking backwards compatibility because then the old stuff doesn't work and people get annoyed, right? That's plausible. Let's just pretend that that's the answer. Now, in security, sometimes you have to break backwards compatibility, right? If the old stuff is insecure, then you want to make a change in a way that the old stuff no longer works. And, you know, we do that occasionally in security. Should Microsoft do it? I mean, that's going to require a lot of research. That's a trade-off that they have to figure out how to make. I don't have the data to make that trade-off for them. I don't know what they're going to decide, but remember that they tend not to be liable for security measures. So for them, the cost of insecurity isn't that great. If you remember with the first question, I talked about regulation, talked about ways the government has to step in and mandate security. If in fact there were penalties, like serious ones for insecurity, then companies like Microsoft will be more likely to break backwards compatibility to secure something that was insecure, right? So that's going to flow into the mix. As to what Microsoft should do, I have no idea.
All right. Our next question comes from In Your Face Lab, which is a technology news watch organization here in Montreal. And they ask, we are curious to get Mr. Schneier's opinion on how to strengthen collaboration in the world of information security. How can we attain collaboration between competitors of the same ecosystem? How do we include the police and justice systems and white hat hackers and such? And how do we open these collaboration channels without creating new risks?
You know, it's interesting. I think that's a question that has nothing to do with cybersecurity. You could ask that about, I don't know, aircraft design or foods policy. I don't know how to increase collaboration. I mean, we can make it so it has to happen. You can make it so companies want to. I don't have an answer. I mean, it's a good question. It's important. But how to do it is a bureaucracy question, and I have like no expertise on. So I'm not convinced I'm going to have any kind of special answer. I mean, the questioner asked something interesting. How do you do it without creating additional risks? Right? So what are the security costs to those kinds of collaborative environments? And that's worth thinking about, something I really haven't thought of. But I think the questioner is right to say, hey, you know, it isn't all good. There might be some bad things that come along with it. And let's make sure that what we do ends up being worth it.
All right. So our next question comes from Jean-Philippe.
This is question number 7, if you count.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's some sub-questions in there. I'm at 6. My count is at 6. But
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm miscounting. All right.
So our next question comes from Jean-Philippe Descaries-Mathieu. He's the head of cybersecurity at les Commissionnaires du Québec. I hope Jean-Philippe will forgive me because I had to shorten this question slightly. The current shortage of skilled workers in the information security field, especially in government and law enforcement, where salaries and benefits tend to be less attractive than in the private sector. This could be construed as a threat to the West. What initiatives do you think could be undertaken to bridge that talent gap? And maybe a question to lead is, do you agree with Jean-Philippe that it is a threat to the West, that there is a shortage of skilled workers in information security?
I don't know about a threat to the West, but there certainly is a cybersecurity skills gap, you know, all over the world. And I mean, your questioner like kind of hid an answer in the question, right? Given that the salary is less, raise the salary. That seems like a no-brainer, right? And you know, this is going to speak to the problem with all my answers. They're going to cost money, right? You know, the answer can't be what can we do that is free to solve this problem we have. Solutions cost money. And it's going to be things like raising the salary, having a better career path, having more programs in schools, which will be funding them. And that's going to be the way to deal with this skills gap. Now, people are writing about this and are more detailed in the how you do training, how you can cross-train people, move people from one to the other. And there's a lot out there. You don't need me to tell you any of that. But I think the real important thing to say is that if we expect this kind of expertise in government in particular, then the salaries have to be competitive or you're not going to get them. And if you don't want the salaries to be competitive, then you have to accept that you won't get the expertise. You can't have it both ways.
I think part of his question, if I understood his question well, was that the gap, it's if we compare the public sector with the private sector, but also if we compare to other states, and I'm guessing that's where he was getting this idea.
Yeah, I'm not convinced other states. I assume you mean other governments are doing much better. I'm not. But yes, this is important, and not just for national security. It's important for product safety and customer security and regulation and everything. And it's not just in cybersecurity; it's all over tech. You don't have the expertise in government, so the companies kind of make up their own rules.
Right. Okay, so I'm at question 7, and
right.
We're doing good for time. Well, I think we'll have time to. Yeah, I think we'll have time to ask more questions than I was expecting. So I'm very glad.
I am pithier than you expect.
Okay, so we have a question now. Okay, this is we've received at least 3 questions on the impact of quantum computing on cybersecurity. So this seems to be something that a lot of people are thinking about. So I'm going to try to mix and match these a little bit.
Well, you just stop there. I mean, I got the question, right? What's the impact of of quantum on cybersecurity? You don't have to read the questions. You have to sort of know what they're about. So I've written about this, and I really urge anyone who's interested to get my essay. Its title is "Cryptography After the Aliens Land," and you can search for it with my name, and it'll pop up. It was an IEEE Computers and Security a couple of years ago, where I go through it's only like 700 words, but I go through the details of this question. And the basic answer is don't worry too much right now. Right? So the reason we worry about quantum computing is because in theory, they can break public key cryptography algorithms easily. Now, in theory, notice I said that, and also easily is poorly defined. But it has the potential of rendering those algorithms insecure. Right? And that'll happen, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, never. We actually don't know. But right now, NIST, the United States, is having a competition for quantum-resistant public key algorithms. The next few years, we will have a quantum-resistant standard well in advance of the quantum computer being an actual threat. Symmetric cryptography is easy. You just double the key length. We know that is secure. So, I mean, there are changes in what's easy and hard in computation based on quantum computing, but they are not catastrophic, and we are sort of have them well in hand. And also, we actually don't know if building a workable, practical, useful quantum computer, well, we know that it's hard, but we don't know if it's go to the moon hard or go to the sun hard. And they're very different. Right? Go to the moon hard is what? A decade's worth of dedicated work. Go to the sun hard is never going to happen. And it could be either. But the math is, I think, going to be ahead of the physics here. And by the time there is a working quantum computer, there will be better quantum-resistant cryptography algorithms.
One of our questioner was asking, do you think we should already impose new quantum-proof algorithms? Is that something that...
Of course not. That's silly, right?
No.
Wait for us to have them. NIST is going through a multi-year process for quantum-resistant algorithms. They will come up with a standard, and then we will implement it. The process is happening well in the correct order. We don't want to impose the rules now before we have what they're supposed to do.
All right. And another sub-question on this topic comes from Alain Bernardi, who's at INSACAM. And he was wondering, what would the post-quantum impact on cryptocurrencies look like?
I mean, I guess, and one, who cares? And the second is they'll just make them quantum resistant. I don't know.
There's no there's no angle here that you think would be. I mean, if Bitcoin, for example, does become more prevalent and more widely used, then it would just follow the same trend that you just mentioned.
I guess. I mean, we could hope that it crashes into nothingness, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. A question now. This is one that comes from me. In 2014, you somewhat famously said that surveillance had become the business model of the internet, something that we now I think has become widely, accepted. It's worth mentioning that you said this 1 year after the Snowden revelations, so you were maybe slightly ahead of the curve on that one. So we're now 8 years later, and do you think it's still the same situation? Do you think we are learning to better balance our thirst for new gadgets with the importance of privacy?
So who's the we in your sentence?
Collectively, the collective we.
The collective has no choice, right? I mean, we have built a system where these technologies are designed for the short-term financial interests of a bunch of tech billionaires, right? So there isn't really a we who gets to make that choice. It's like, the advice of don't have an email address, don't have a smartphone, don't have a credit card. It's fundamentally dumb advice for the 21st century. And yes, surveillance is the business model of the internet, right? I said that in, I guess the book is up there, Data and Goliath. Shoshana Zuboff, in her book, Surveillance Capitalism, calls it surveillance capitalism, very much the same thing. And that was, 2 years ago? Her book came out. And it is the way the internet works. And as long as we let the market, which are the tech monopolies, decide how this all goes, it's going to be the same. It's not going to change. And here again, I look to government to step in and regulate this because the market's not. So nothing has changed since 2014. And I'm not sure I was that prescient back then. I think we all knew that surveillance was the business model of the internet. I mean, we knew that years before. I mean, it's gotten worse, but maybe it hasn't. I mean, it's gotten bigger, but it hasn't gotten appreciably different.
Well, I mean, in terms of the popular understanding of it, I think you were, in my sense, you were present.
That's right. I think people understand that surveillance is now the business model of the internet, but they know they're powerless against it. Not that they don't care, it's that they know they're powerless. I mean, you're on Facebook, not because you like Facebook, because you feel you have to be on Facebook. You know they spy on you, you have no choice. Right? Whether you're using Gmail or something else, you just don't feel like you have the choice. That the things that are easy to use spy on you. So people just swallow and accept it. I know they don't like it.
Great. Thank you. We have a few more questions, and I think maybe we'll ask 2 more questions, and then we'll be at our final question. So another question from Geneviève La Jeunesse she asked the question earlier on. So what do you think is the most pressing issue we need to deal with when it comes to online civil liberties and online advocacy?
It's interesting. So I tend not to like to rank issues in terms of importance or pressingness. I mean, I don't know what the most important is, right? I mean, why do I have to rank them, right? The important ones are corporate surveillance and government surveillance. And I don't know which one's more important, and they go hand in hand. And I think we have to deal with them both. And they're both very hard to deal with because everybody wants to spy on us. And nothing is really stopping them. But writ large, I think those are more important than like illegal uses of our data. And legal uses of our data by corporate and government power, I think, are more dangerous right now.
Okay. So maybe a final question, and this one comes from Olivier Bilodeau at GoSecure again. So Olivier asks, for a long time, we blamed bad security on the fact that software engineering and IT practices were young. And as they are getting older and the security problems are still numerous, do you think it will require regulation? I think you already answered this question. So,
I mean, the answer, of course, is yes. And right.
Yeah.
And then the question is important, right? In the beginning, the nascence of our industry made us loath to regulate it, right? It was too new. It was moving too fast. Now it is mature. And I think the notion that, a bunch of techies get to build the world as they see fit doesn't make sense anymore. And this stuff matters too much to society. And you can't have the free-for-all of those early years. And yet, when the internet was new, when computing was new, we didn't know what we were doing. We were moving fast. We were breaking things. It's a bit dangerous to do that now. So yeah, I think like any mature industry, we need more outside imposition of the morals and ethics of society, which we don't have today.
Great. Well, Mr. Schneier, thank you so much for taking the time to answer the questions of the Quebec cybersecurity community. Thanks to everyone also who's watching right now. We really hope you enjoyed this. And if you don't already follow Bruce Schneier, his blog, Schneier on Security, is definitely a reference for anyone who's interested in information security.
And then, and next year when we're open again, let's like do something in person.
And fly you into Montreal. That would be,
I love
that would be awesome.
I'm happy to go.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. This was very interesting.
Thanks for having me.